Welcome back, everybody. We are continuing with chapter 255 of D.Gray, a guardian bathed in silvery light, which honestly is a third nod to the silver hair that Bookman Jr. has, which I wonder if that comes into point later. Obviously, in this chapter, it is brought up as that is why Alan's hair is silver. But essentially, I'm just going to go straight into this chapter. If you want to get a little bit of a recap before going into chapter 254 and 255, I recommend watching my other video first. But if you just want to listen to 255, we're jumping in. So this chapter actually doesn't start where chapter 254 ended, with Alan waking up from his memories. This actually adds another memory that happened, I guess, in between. But it just felt like it would have been rushed and awkward to put into the ending of the previous chapter, which I am fine with. So this chapter starts with Alan after he destroyed the Akuma, which is mana. He's broken, he's cursed, he's sad, he's in despair. And ultimately, Bookman Jr. comes from Helix energy to essentially comfort him. His visage, or I guess his spirit, comes to Alan, telling him not to despair and granting him a blessing. And he says he will use the last of his Helix energy to do so here. Ultimately, it does do something, as after the blessing is cast, we see Alan's hair turn to what we now know as his silver hair. As before, in his previous backstory, he did have red hair. I assume a lot of us thought that his hair changing was part of his curse. He thought in this chapter that it was due to how much despair he had, ultimately causing his hair to turn white or silver. But it is confirmed here that the reason his hair has changed color is because Bookman Jr. essentially blessed him. So he essentially is that reason. Now, an important thing I want to note here is it seems like after the spear ended and all of this happened, there's still a shred of consciousness that Bookman Jr. had within Alan, or within the afterlife even. So potentially, some point after the spear is when 253.5 could have happened. I imagine it happens at some point during the spear, but I do want to note that in the timeline, I don't believe we get an exact year for when that happens. It could have happened later. And because he is kind of flittering around near-death state, he is ultimately able to talk to other Lobby when he gets shot and essentially is starting to fade. So after this, Alan kind of realizes how important Bookman Jr. was to his life. He's like, the silver in my hair, it's his silver. He essentially realizes all of this. And that is like when Alan wakes up. So Alan wakes up after this final memory, even though it happened before in the previous chapter. I don't believe Alan woke up once at the end of 254, then got this other memory because he was like half out of it, and then wakes up here. So nonetheless, Alan is now awake. We still see Link using the Atunda, which is a golem that takes his life force and gives it to somebody else to heal them. And he's doing this to keep Alan alive. And they're just begging Lucia to heal him. Because obviously, like I mentioned in the previous chapter, they assume they have an antidote. Because or else, how would they find out the information? And more than that, it feels like it's a test. Like, how would they get the Campbell Mansion information if Alan had to pass away in order to get the information? So they're begging, while Alan is kind of in his own head, realizing how important like Bookman Jr. is, which really is beating you over the head as an audience reader here, because I do think he'll probably play a role later. Like I mentioned, I do think there will be some sort of Alan Bookman kind of reminiscing that happens at some point in the story. But he's sorry that Lavi had passed away. He realizes once again how important he is to everybody, and he once again will tell the Zeugles what happened. He is saying that he's a part of me, he's part of my soul, and obviously Lucia and the other Zeugle, who we actually get the name of in this chapter, which I didn't think we had before, which is Hazim. So it's Hazim and Lucia, where they're just continuously begging for Lucia to help. They also hear the information that Alan says with him being part of the soul, and they're like, your last junior, or Bookman Jr., cherished Alan and was willing to protect him. How can you people be fine with just letting Alan pass away like this? But obviously, like I mentioned in the previous chapter, hearing this information, Lucia is quite shocked. And I don't know what the relationship between the two of them are. As we know, according to the wiki, I did think like this wasn't happening at the same time when it was the case. But it seems like Lucia was that young girl who was at the Campbell mansion. So maybe Bookman Jr. had met her there when they were younger. But we don't know. As I mentioned as well in the previous chapter, Lucia was not shown as one of the people behind Bookman Jr. So maybe it's more of a respect that the Zeugles have. But nonetheless, Link kind of keeps pushing, so much so that like he reaches his limit. Link literally passes out because obviously he can't give all of his life force at once. It's a type of thing where you can give some to heal somebody, but you can't just give your life at once. It's more like it's an accumulation thing. So Link is now passed out. Alan is fading. Johnny is like, am I helpless? Can I not do anything? He's like been begging, and he just is like, what can I do? I can't watch Alan pass away. He begs again, ultimately for Hazim to say that we should save Alan. If his confession is actually true that Bookman Jr. is part of him, that's more reason to just let him stay alive. So he tells Lucia to heal him and take him ... master. Now that's weird, and there might be a translation. I assume it's take him to master, which master I'd assume would be Bookman. But it could as well be that Lucia is actually the master and Hazim is her servant, despite Hazim being shown to be the boss based on prior things, with him showing killing intent on their first meeting and him being sitting in the chair while Lucia is kind of standing. But I do think it's more meant to be that take him to Bookman Jr., as Hazim literally states after this that they've been waiting for so long already. So once again, I assume it's Bookman. If it's not Bookman, it's somebody else who cares deeply for Bookman Jr. So Lucia comes over to Alan and starts singing this song. And I guess the song is the antidote. As it like echoes within him. And we see these flashing lights around him. I don't assume these lights are part of the song, because we do see these lights as well earlier in the chapter when Alan wakes up, or it might have been in the previous chapter. We see them a little bit, but that might actually just be Link's energy. So it could actually be part of the song specifically. And as the song goes on, we see that the essentially shell that the medicine was in starts to burn. And I guess that is cue that Alan will be okay. Where we then see Hazim look at the medicine case thingy burn, bows to Alan, and then we see the final words of the chapter being, "Forgive me, Alan." And was that Lavi's voice echoing to me from far away? His silver hair, proof of their bond. So that's the end of the chapter. Like I said, this chapter is, I feel like, a lot less dense than chapter 254 was, where potentially it also shows that Lavi or Bookman Jr. might still have some vestige within Alan. Well, the beginning of the chapter makes it seem like the last of him was given to give that blessing to Alan. It could be just the last of his helix energy, the last of him like being able to do something of impact in the actual world. Maybe that's what that signified. But he still exists as part of Alan, so it's going to be something that comes into play later. Anyways, that's just another part of the theory. Like I said, it's a short chapter. I do think that the next thing that we'll see, obviously, is another backstory and Nea's backstory of going to the Campbell Mansion. But then I do believe they might try to rescue Bookman and Lavi. As we know, they were kind of put in a precarious situation as the Noahs were trying to find out what happened 35 years ago. I do also want to note here that we see that the Bookmen tend to be impartial, and this could be its own video as well, but the fact that Bookman chose to join the side of the exorcist and I guess more so innocents in the church, despite staying neutral and literally having statements by the Noah saying we had good relations 35 years ago before the event with Nea happened, does potentially signify that Nea's passing and ultimately leading to Bookman Jr.'s passing is what made Bookman be more proactive in the world rather than standing on the sidelines, which was Bookman Jr.'s kind of big reason for leaving the Bookman. He just couldn't stand by watching that. Anyways, like I said, interesting chapter. I am curious where it leads, whether it goes straight to trying to find Bookman or goes to the Campbell Mansion. Either way, we'll definitely get both of those at some point. I hope you enjoyed the chapter. Let me know your thoughts below, and see you later.